Hi, my name's Joe and I'm a solutions engineer with SmartBear, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the collaboration features of SwaggerHub. So SwaggerHub is our platform for designing and developing APIs by collaborating on OpenAPI definitions. And we're going to take a look at how that works. So this is my hub view, and this is showing me basically all of the APIs and domains that I have access to across all of the organizations that I'm a member of. So if I go over here to the left, I can see all of the organizations that I'm a member of. And I can break that down further into seeing all of the different projects that are within that organization. So if I click on an organization, I will only see the APIs and domains that are specific to that organization. And the same will happen if I click on one of the projects. I'm only going to see the APIs and domains that are part of the project. So that's a big part of how you structure your organizations and your workflows in SwaggerHub. I can go up here and I can create a new organization, for example. I'll specify an email address. And then I can add a little description of the organization if I need to. I can add the organization. And then I can start creating APIs that are going to be part of that organization as well. Now, when it comes to adding members of an organization, that happens at a slightly higher level. So I can go into my organization settings. First of all, I can take a look at all the teams that I have in an organization. So in SwaggerHub, you have an organization, then you have all of your teams within that organization, and then within those teams are all of your team members. And how you structure the team and the team members is up to you. So here's some teams, and I can go into members to take a look at the members. So I am the owner of this organization at the moment, so I can see that signified here by my owner status. If I want to add other users to work on the APIs and domains in this organization, I can add them as either designers or consumers. So now a designer is basically someone who's going to have full access to the APIs and domains within that organization, right? So an API designer is going to be able to change the YAML, edit documentation, create new versions of an API, turn on integrations, all of that good stuff. Whereas a consumer is just someone maybe who needs to understand the functionality of an API. And how you structure this will depend on a couple of things. But one thing to note is that these users you add, they could be internal users, as in internal to your organization, or they could be external. So one way that SwaggerHub is often implemented is as a kind of go-between in between a front-end and a back-end development team. So the back-end developers will update API definitions, and then the front-end developers may be consumer users in this example. So they'll log in and they will see, what endpoints have been added, what endpoints have been removed, and what's still there for them to work with. Another model for how SwaggerHub can be deployed is as sitting between an internal team and an external range of users. So these could be third-party organizations or teams or integrators who need to work with your APIs. In that example, those third parties could be your consumers. Now, how that looks in the UI. So if I open up a definition here, this is the designer view. So a designer will see the YAML, they'll see a preview of the documentation, and they'll see all of the extra options on the toolbar up top here for subscribing to the API or turning on integrations or whatever else they might be interested in. A consumer, on the other hand, then, when they open up an API definition, they might just see something like this. So instead of seeing the edit view, they're just seeing the documentation view. So in this case, if I'm seeing this, it might just be the situation that I need to understand how to use the API. I need to understand what parameters an operation accepts, what responses it'll send back. I don't need to be able to actually edit the API. So that's the difference between a consumer and a designer. As a designer then, I have a lot more options available to me in terms of what I can change in the API definition. So obviously I can change the API definition itself by editing the YAML here in the editor. And as I add and remove components here, that's automatically reflected in the documentation as well, which is a useful feature of the tool. So the documentation is automatically kept updated with the definition. I can also collaborate within this kind of IDE view. So if I wanted to make a change and then tag someone who might need to review that change, I can do that by adding a comment here. So, let's say I wanted to draw someone's attention to this part of the definition. I can add a comment for this line and say, hey Patrick, can you take a look at this new endpoint? And if I leave this comment, if Patrick is subscribed to the API definition, he's going to get an email saying you've been tagged in a comment. He can open up his SwaggerHub and take a look at what I've asked him to take a look at. And then what happens next really is it's up to you in terms of how your workflow is structured. So Patrick might then fork that version of fork the API definition into his own SwaggerHub instance, create his new version of it, make his changes, make his suggestions there, and then send it back to me to be reviewed and merged into the master version of the API definition. But again, SwaggerHub is kind of a blank canvas in that respect. You can use it to implement a whole variety of workflows and processes. It's really up to you and what works for your organization. So that's a quick look at collaboration in SwaggerHub, and I hope you found it useful. I'll talk to you again.